Hey everybody, I don't know if you can believe it, but it is already August. I am having a hard time with how fast 2021 is flying by. But since it is August and the beginning of the month, it is time for me to do a wrap up. I read some fantastic books in the month of July, and I cannot wait to tell you all about them. So let's get started. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog. How are you all doing today? As always, I hope you're happy, I hope you're healthy, I hope you're safe, and of course, I hope you're reading an amazing book or two or three or four. The weather has finally changed a little bit here in Northern California where I live. It is a little cooler. Nephew is still here, but able to do a bit more outside activities with him. My husband has been taking him around to photograph. They've been doing some video stuff together. We've been walking and then dogs and all that. Plus, he has been reading a storm of anime books. He is just flying through them. We cannot buy them fast enough. But I can't complain about that now, can I? I am here to tell you that I had a very good July, but it started a little scary. So I read one book and then I started a book that was a bit of a chunkster. And it was taking me a bit to get through. Loved it, but it was taking me a bit. And I was like, am I only going to read 2 books in July? Am I only going to have 2 books to talk about this month? But I did finish it, and then I was able to fly through a number of other books, all of them very, very good, most of them very, very different. So get out your pen, get out your paper, get out your Goodreads, however you keep track of your TBR. If you are so able, I encourage you to order these books from your local independent bookstore. All of them are out but one, I believe, but you know I make mistakes on that. As I go through the pile, I'll see if I missed any. But if you're a library user, get your library to get you a copy as soon as possible. So let's get started. The first book I want to tell you about is Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. Now, I've already talked about this book in my top 5 reads of the year so far. I am a huge Brandon Taylor fan. Actually, his first book, Real Life, is right there. Real Life and Memorial by Brian Washington are my top 2 reads of 2020. So the top 2 reads every year sit right behind me for the year until the end of the year, and I pick a top 2 reads again. So there you go. Filthy Animals is Brandon's short story collection that came out after Real Life, and it is fantastic. All I'll say in this is that many of these stories are interconnected around the life of a young man named Lionel. He is a gay young man who has attempted to commit suicide and now is dealing sort of with what happens when that is not successful and you have to sort of go back into the real world. He creates relationships with people. He gets involved with a couple, a man and a woman who have sort of an open relationship, and he gets involved with a man and there's complications there. And there's all sorts of different discussions here about education, society, class, race, all of that kind of stuff that Brandon Taylor does so well. For me, Brandon captures people so beautifully for a new novelist. Like, I just get every person he puts on this page. Filthy Animals is a fantastic story. I also highly recommend And of Cleves, which is actually a story about 2 women, a lesbian couple in a relationship, and it is very, very good. This collection is fantastic. I don't read a lot of short story collections, so you know if I'm saying that, I really mean it. So this is Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I actually ordered this from Brandon's local independent bookstore, and they were able to have it set aside, and Brandon signed it for me. So it is even extra special that way. So that's a good thing to take notice of, y'all. If you are really a fan of an author and they have a new book coming out, ask them, email them, DM them, do it on Twitter, where their local independent bookstore is and if they would be willing to go in and sign a copy, and then you can pay the bookstore for the book and also to ship it to you. Media mail rate is very inexpensive, and that's how I get a lot of my signed copies on authors that I haven't yet to meet but plan to. Okay, I told you that the next book I read this month was a chunkster, and I have also talked about this one because you guys, this is so good. It is so good. And this is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. I know a lot of people that I talk to on Twitter and Instagram have already read this as well. Anthony is, of course, known for his Pulitzer Prize winning novel, All the Light We Cannot See. but this is not the same. This is a very different book, told in 3 different time periods. One is late 1400s Constantinople, one is sort of modern day Idaho, and then one is this futuristic time where we learn more and more about it as the book goes along. In each section, there's a group of characters, really 2 different characters that are interacting, and their lives are coming together, and it all focuses around this manuscript, this Greek manuscript that was found, that tells the story of a man on a journey he wants to be turned into a bird so he can go to this paradise land he has heard about, and he has this adventure. All of that book sort of follows as a theme throughout the books, but throughout the stories of these characters. So we have a young woman in Constantinople who is trying to earn money in order to help her sister who's very ill. We also have a young man who has been taken from his family to enter into a band, a group of warriors who's going to try to conquer Constantinople, and how those 2 stories come together. In modern day Idaho, we have an older man, I think he's in his 80s, who is putting on a play version with a bunch of children of the book that I have mentioned, and a young boy who is very disenfranchised with the destruction of nature around him in his community, and he has decided to bomb a real estate agency, or not a real estate agency, a real estate developer's building by going through the library. And then in the future, we have a young woman who is on a craft, or in a spacecraft that is headed somewhere to get away from what has happened to the planet Earth. And she is put in lockdown when contamination hits, and she has a relationship with this computer that's sort of dictating everything that goes on in her life. All of the stories are well told. All of the characters are fantastic. All of them have fantastic resolution. For a book of this size, it's completely and utterly readable. And when all of those pieces of all of those puzzles come together, and he does his aha moment, Anthony Doerr proves why he is a genius. So that's Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, out now. No, I'm sorry, this is out September 28th. From Scribner, which is not that far away. I'm just telling you right now, but this is going to be a beautiful book. I will be getting a finished copy for myself, for my shelf, as soon as possible. Okay, here is the only book I'm going to do about 3 sentences on, because I just did not care for it at all. And it was a Spilling Tea Book Club book, and that's A House in the Country by Ruth Adam. Now, I love Dean Street Press, who puts these books out. They have produced many, many a book that I have absolutely adored. But this book is sort of, it's poised as fiction, but really it is very, very autobiographical, about Ruth and a group of her friends who rented a very, very large country manor house that has 30 some odd rooms, moves there from London, sort of at the end of World War II, when they're trying to sort of get away from all war has brought to London, and their relationship with the house and with the community. For me, there was really a lack of, and I don't say this often, there just was no narrative plot, no narrative interesting thing to follow. The characters were all very surface. It sort of felt like Ruth knew all of these people and sort of just expected us to know them as well. And it just became problematic with any sort of connection. I just did not care for this book. I do not recommend it. But that being said, I do recommend Dean Street Press because I do love them so very, very much. So that's that. That's our negative review. That's all we're going to do today. There's no more coming your way. The next book I read is The Council of Animals by Nick McDonell. This is out now from Henry Holt. It came out in July as well. And this is sort of what I'm saying is like sort of this modern / futuristic fable. So what has happened is an event has occurred which has basically wiped out almost all of humanity, and animals are starting to sort of take over the world like they used to. But a conclave of animals, or a council of animals, get together to decide what to do with the rest of humanity that did survive. And they're trying to decide if they should let us live and give us a second chance, or if they should just destroy us so they don't give us the opportunity to continue to destroy the world around us. 2 different opinions, 2 different groups. One group winds up going on a search for the human colony near them, and hope is sort of rested into a young boy that can speak with the animals. That's all I'm going to say. It is very fabulistic. It has a lot of like moral discussion regarding sort of consumption and our place in the world, and how we need to own what we're doing to the planet, and how eventually if we don't do something fast enough, our children are not going to have a place to live like we live in our world. And it also shows how animals have had to live through all of this and adapt and, you know, sort of change their world in order to survive what we have done to their world. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I really enjoyed it. It is a quick, fun read. It has some great illustrations, but in the same time, it's a bit of a think piece. So you can actually take it into like a book club and really talk about the moralistic issues that it delves into in really interesting ways. Some people will agree, some people will disagree. It'd be interesting to discuss who would wipe us out if this were to happen, who would keep us around, all of that. Very, very good. So that's The Council of Atoms by Nick McDonell, and this is out now from Henry Holt. I want to thank them. They sent me an early copy and I absolutely really loved it. Then I decided that I really wanted to go just fantasy. I wanted to do something completely different, and I had forgotten that Tacheyon, Tachyon, Tacheyon Publishers had sent me the new short story collection by Marjorie Liu. Marjorie Liu wrote the sci-fi series, comic book series Monstrous, which I absolutely loved. And this is a collection of short stories called The Tangleroot Palace. Now, 2 short stories collections in one video. What are you doing, Russell? But these were super, super fun. You know, she does a very good job of world building in a short amount of pages. She does a fantastic job of creating relationships and all of that. And she just really, I wanted all of them to be longer. So I think that's the biggest compliment. I could have lived in each story's world even longer. I will say, I think my favorite story was called The Briar and the Rose. It is this story of this woman who's like this fierce woman warrior who works for this other woman who is sort of she's ridiculously beautiful, and she's sort of conniving, and she's calculating, and she's trying to get what she wants in society. And we find out very soon after that she's actually taken over the body of another woman, and she is much, much, much older. But on Sundays, she must sleep all day. She must sleep all day so that her body can rejuvenate and her magic can sort of keep what's going on. But at that time, the woman whose body she is in, Rose, sometimes wakes up, and Briar and Rose start to have sort of this friendship relationship and how that changes. So there's that going on, while there's also this intrigue of this woman trying to connive her way into a marriage and money and doing all of that, and how Briar is a very sort of, and I can't remember exactly if her name is Briar. Yes, it is Briar. She is sort of an employee, but also in charge. It's very, very good. And it has a sort of queer love story at its heart. I liked it. I liked all of the short stories in the Tangleroot Palace. I do recommend it. I listened to this on audio while I read it, and it is also a fantastic audiobook. So this is The Tangleroot Palace by Marjorie Liu. This is out now from Tacheyon. Thank you, Tacheyon, for sending me this early copy. Really, really loved it. Really, really loved it. Okay, next I went into another Spilling Tea book club book, but this one I absolutely loved. And that's Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. I have only read Joan Didion's nonfiction. Actually, someone on Instagram was like, I didn't even know she wrote fiction, but she did. And this one is really, really good. So this is set in the late 1960s. At the heart of this is a young woman and who's going through a very, very hard time. What's going on is she is going through a divorce, or her relationship is sort of on the rocks. She's not really going through a divorce. There's a separation that's going on. She's lived a very unique life, and it starts in part of like Nevada, in this little tiny town that her father bought that really didn't have anything to it. Her father was sort of one of those con men that always had this idea for how he was going to make it big, but he never really does. She, very young, winds up going to New York, becomes a model, and does well enough for herself. And then one day she finds out that her mother has been killed in a car crash, and it sort of derails her. But she winds up meeting a man, gets put in some movies, they get married. They have a young daughter, and that daughter is not living at home. I'm not going to explain why, because I think that's really a part of the narrative. And she's very, very, very connected to her daughter, but her husband sort of uses that as a political piece in what's going on in their marriage. What happens is she winds up actually getting pregnant again, and her husband forces her to end the pregnancy using the other daughter as sort of this manipulative piece. And all of this comes together. I felt like this book had a lot of it felt dated in its sort of its language and its atmosphere, but at the same time felt very relevant in a time where her abortion was actually done illegally under the table. This was before Roe versus Wade. So, you know, she's doing that. So it's sort of this discussion on how that affected her. Felt very relevant to today and what's going on and what's still, you know, the discussion regarding abortion. So it was very, very timely, but also dated, if that makes any sense at all. I thought the prose were really very, very interesting. It's not a long read. I thought the characters were weird and frustrating and just actually very, very well done. So that's Play It As It Is by Joan Didion, out from FSG, and it's been out from FSG for quite some time, and I really, really liked it. So I'll have more to say when Ryan and I do our video about it, trying to keep it pretty short and sweet here, trying not to do any spoilers. Next book I want to talk about is the book that absolutely ripped my heart out, and that is Heaven by Mieko Kawakami, and I'm going to put that up there. Mieko. Why do I want to put the O sound there? Mieko Kawakami. And this is Heaven, out from Europa editions. This is translated from the Japanese by Sam Bett and David Boyd. So if you're looking for a book for Women in Translation Month, which is August, I have a perfect example for you of brilliance. This is the story of a young boy and a young girl who are in junior high school, and they are heavily, heavily bullied. Now, the young boy has what is, you know, described as a lazy eye, and the young girl they just sort of torture her for her sort of social standing, but we learn a lot about that as the book goes on. They are treated horribly. They are physically, mentally, verbally abused, but they find each other, and it's really about that relationship and that friendship and the difficulties of being on the outskirts and coming together and having never really had friends. They struggle with sort of that dynamic as well, but they both have a lot of secrets about their past and who they are. All I say is, this is sort of my quote on this. This book made me cry, it made me cry, it made me cry. And then it made me smile. And it was absolutely beautiful. So that's Mieko Kawakami's Heaven. And this is out from Europa editions right now, and it is so brilliant. Speaking of brilliant, Europa, again, Europa. The long list for the Booker Prize came out, and I don't read the long list for the Booker Prize. The reason being, most of the titles are not available or are very expensive to get in the United States. Some of them are not even out. I find that very, very frustrating. So I just don't. So, but I do pick and choose the ones that I think are really, really interesting. And Europa had sent me The Promise by Damon Galgut. And I had thought it sounded fantastic, but it was on that list, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and read it, and I devoured this book. Now, Damon Galgut has been shortlisted for the Booker twice before. He is a South African writer. He is also a gay man, which I didn't know much about him, so I started to sort of dive into it. I hear he has a fantastic backlist that I am on the hunt for. I'm super obsessed right now. So what is The Promise? The Promise is a book told in 4 parts, all centered around one family and 4 funerals that occur within that family. The promise itself is a promise that the mother, who passes away in the beginning of the book from an illness, has asked the father to keep, to give the woman who has lived on the property, a black woman, who has lived on the property with them for years and years and years, taking care of the home, taking care of the children. She really raised the children. The mother says to the father, I want you to give her her house. I want you to give it to her so she can have it. It should be hers. And the father agrees. He promises. And only the youngest daughter hears this. And so once the mother passes away, this book takes place sort of during apartheid and then after apartheid. So at the beginning of the book, when mother passes away, it's apartheid. There's still a lot of racism, but black people can't even own property. The father says he doesn't remember this promise, and it really starts this divide in the family. There are 3 siblings. One is this young girl who she was struck by lightning. We learned that at the very beginning of the book, and it sort of made her a unique character. The middle sister sort of stays at home. The brother winds up, he is in the military. He comes home from the mother's funeral after having just killed a woman, and then he makes some decisions and goes different places. I don't want to ruin it for you, but each section deals with this promise that is how just holds over the family this whole entire time. And as every person passes away, this youngest daughter will not let this go, and she is very close to this woman, and she wants her to have her home. This book is about family. It's about race. It's about so many amazing things. It's about just the difficulty of finding your own voice and all of that. So I absolutely recommend The Promise. It seems early to be voting for one. I wanted to win the Booker. I think it is brilliant. So that's The Promise by Damon Galgut, out from Europa here in the United States. It is fantastic. I could talk about this book, by the way. I could actually talk about this book, Heaven. Actually, I could talk about a lot of these books forever, and you guys would have to listen to me. So there is my stack of reading for the month of July. It was a fantastic reading month, and it's only going to be a fantastic reading month in August as well, I can already tell. So I hope, as always, that all of these books have made it onto your TBR, or you've read them and we can talk about it in the comments below. As always, if you're a return subscriber, I could not do this without you. I thank you very, very much. If you are new to my channel, I hope you subscribe. I hope you stick around. And of course, I hope you like what I'm doing. So as always, I encourage you to read globally, shop locally, and until next time, I wish you happy reading. Bye, everyone.